What will you learn in History 110B? A survey of global history from 1800, the Napoleonic War period, to the end of World War II, 1945. Well, the first thing to be conscious of is that this course is very ambitious in scope. Geographically, the world is our tableau. The world, even in 1900, contains thousands of different cultures, political organizations, empires, kingdoms, communities, different ethnic groups. So the scale is vast, and the events that happened were so significant. Whether it's the Industrial Revolution, the global integration of the economy, the invention of new technologies, or the imperial wave by which Europe came to dominate so much of the non-Western world. So the one thing that I can promise to you is that we will do justice to this history. In particular, throughout this semester, I'm going to ask you big questions that's going to have you look critically at the past and also to make connections between the 19th century and present contemporary Canada. Among the subjects that we will explore are Japan and Japanese exceptionalism. Why was this country so successful in modernizing, unlike so many of its rivals, even countries like China that seemed more positioned? What were some of the technologies that laid the foundation for the first information age and the first period of rapid global integration? We're going to look at not only technologies that you know, like the steam engine and the boiler and steamships, but also the transatlantic cable that enabled the rapid transfer of information across vast differences and made the world shrink. One of the most important things that we need to understand, because it's really embedded in our current world system, is to try to figure out why there was this imperial wave. Why did the West conquer the non-Western world? And how did this colonial system not only expand over time, but have such a different footprint in various world regions? Many of you have had, are familiar with World War I. You've had this in history courses before, particularly from a Canadian perspective. You understand what happened in the trenches. But what we're going to do in our class is kind of draw on some of your knowledge to ask the question of how World War I, the agony in the trenches, really broke the political system, the international system, and really raised fundamental doubts about Western civilization, white supremacy, and really laid the seeds for decolonization. We're going to look at the Palestinian question. It still rages today, as we will see. Many of the origins of this crisis actually go back to British policies after World War I, when they established a mandate in Palestine. We're going to look at the Great Depression, which is really the beginning of the contemporary era of history, this economic crisis that gave rise to fascism and raised so many doubts about laissez-faire economics and democracy. We're not going to spend a lot of time looking at Western society, but one of the things we do want to look at is post-war America, particularly the Roaring '20s, and how this in some ways laid the foundation, the blueprint for the modern consumer culture. We're going to have to dig into Nazism and try to figure out what fascism was as an ideology and why it was so successful in building support among ordinary people disillusioned with their political system, democracy. Not just in Germany and the Weimar Republic. There was really a fascist wave that swept across the world, and it, of course, paved the way for World War II. We're going to often take different perspectives. One of the things we're going to do is to look at psychohistory. In particular, we're going to try to psychoanalyze people like Stalin, to try to figure out if the brutality that he suffered at the hands of his alcoholic cobbler father might have contributed to his sociopathy and his apparent lack of concern or mercy, and how this contributed to kind of the forgotten Holocaust in world history, the Holodomor, the mass state-organized starvation in Ukraine during the 1930s. We're going to look at World War II. It's kind of our last focal point. A lot of you already know a lot of this history. We're going to look at some of the hidden history, the less known chapters that were very significant turning point events. We're going to look at the horrors of World War II because this was so important in setting, the stage for the post-war international system, the UN, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. And we're also going to look at World War II in the Pacific, particularly the American decision to drop an atomic bomb on Hiroshima, which ushered humanity into the nuclear age. So History 110 is not just an excursion into the past. Really what our task is, what I see it as our task, is to engage in an archaeology of the ideas, institutions, and tragedy that have given rise to our modern world, the world in which we still live. World history is very challenging. It's very different from national history or the Canadian story that you were given in secondary and primary school. One of the things about global history is that it's fundamentally subversive. It undermines those type of narrow perspectives by taking the whole world as its stage and really non-Western history as its focus. So you will find that this is an engagement with the past, but a history of a quite different scale and scope, and that we're going to burrow in the far distant corners, and that you're going to matriculate with a much deeper understanding of how the world in which you live came to be.